All right, hello and welcome. It is finally patch day. We've been waiting a long time for 0.8.4 and it is now here. So what I'm going to do is run through the patch notes really quickly, probably in less than 10 minutes. For those of you who just want the very gist of the patch, what's happening without getting all of the fine-grained details. If you would like those fine details, I do also have a video uploaded of me going through for about 2 hours, literally line by line, the patch with chat from Twitch yesterday. So if you'd like to hear all the patch notes, maybe while you're playing, that is definitely an option for you. I'm also almost certainly streaming at this point while this video is live, because the patch is live, and so, or about to be live, and so you can come hang out with me there if you want to. But if you just want the really quick gist of it, that's what we'll do right now. So let's go ahead and get into it, get to all the important stuff. So first off, of course, is the new dungeon, the Temporal Sanctum. There's already been a lot of information out in this. We know this is where you make your legendaries. Legendaries will be made in the Eternity Cache. The Eternity Cache is found in the Temporal Sanctum, but that's not all the dungeon seems to do. The dungeon also has modifiers where you can get rewards from that. So for example, here enemies drop more exalted relics. That's going to be pretty sweet. A good reason to actually go through the dungeon and kill enemies as you go. That will be a really nice aspect of it, something that doesn't really exist right now in the Monolith of Fate, where you pretty much just want to run to the end as quickly as you can. Quest rewards have been changed significantly. Now there are more quests that give more passive points, but you only can do up to 15 of them, so you have more choices in which quests you want to do. Makes it a little easier to skip later content if you want to. Works pretty similar to the way that the idle system works. Also, if you decide to finish Chapter 9, Apophis and Majesta quest gives +1 to all attributes upon completion. That's a new reward that did not exist before. Back to stuff that deals with the dungeon. Eternity Cache and legendary items. Here is where that part of the patch notes is, showing you how to do it. You put in a legendary with legendary potential, at least +1 up to +4. You also put in an exalted of the right base type, which is just like a chest for chest or a shield for shield. That also has has 4 fixes on it, and the Eternity Cache will choose a random 1 to 4 depending on the legendary potential you had to start with of the exalted. So if you have a +2 Bastion of Honor like he's got here, and you put in a shield, it will take 2 of those affixes off randomly and put it on the Bastion of Honor, thus creating your legendary. This is again done in the Temporal Sanctum. That's where you'll find the Eternity Cache, where you'll be able to do it. To access the Eternity Cache, you will need keys. There's a special key for the dungeon, for access the dungeon, which is where the Eternity Cache is. You will need keys. And you'll find those in the end game. So the Monolith of Fate is where you're going to get the keys to actually go into the dungeon. Also to note, it's not quite clear how it works, but once you have keys in your inventory, if you have them in your stash, you can use the dungeon to skip some of the story with a new character. Again, not quite clear exactly how that works, but be on the lookout for that. If you're looking for a way to skip farther in the story, do less of the story, get done quicker, this is supposed to be a way to do that. Okay, crafting. This is definitely one of my favorite parts, along with the legendary. Lots changed here. I'll give you the basics of it. The old system of instability and fracturing is gone. It is now replaced with a system of forging potential. Items will have forging potential on them. Better items are likely to have more forging potential, and when you craft, you'll start using that forging potential. Once you hit 0, you can no longer forge. It's kind of like when you fractured the item, except now on the item or on the craft that causes 0, you'll still get the craft. So you never really fail a craft anymore. You just run out of the ability to do any crafts. There are also a bunch of new glyphs and runes. They're really cool. Glyph of Chaos allows you to re-roll an affix that's already on an item. So let's say you've got stun avoidance on it, and you don't want stun avoidance because who does? You can use a Glyph of Chaos to both upgrade the tier of that. So if it's a tier 2, goes to a tier 3, and also changes that affix to something else that can roll in that slot. So maybe get lucky and you get increased health or something like that instead. A better way to target affixes that you don't like than rune removal, so certainly welcome. Another big one is Glyph of Despair. Actually allows you to potentially take instead of upgrading an affix, you can seal it and create a 5th affix slot. This is currently the only way to make a 5th affix slot. outside of like the weird legendary system that can create like a crazy number of affixes because there's already a lot of affixes on uniques and you add more. But out of crafting, this is how you get a 5th affix. So very cool there. High risk, high reward type thing. Glyph of Order prevents the roll of an affix within its range changing when it's upgraded. So if you have like a perfectly rolled tier 3 and you put Glyph of Order on and upgrade it, it becomes a perfectly rolled tier 4 and so on. There's also some new runes. Some of these are really cool and rare. Rune of Ascendance allows you to take an item, like a ring, and turn it into a unique. So if you can target farm, if you're looking for a particular unique ring, if you have some Rune of Ascendance, you can throw some rings in the crafting system, use Rune of Ascendance, and get some uniques and see if you can find the right one. Rune of Creation is basically a mirror. It's very similar to a mirror in Path of Exile, except you can't craft on it anymore. It will duplicate an item. This will be very useful for the legendary system if you have a really good exalted and you have like a +2 or +3 legendary or unique potential. Legendary potential unique, excuse me. I'm still getting used to all these new terms. You have a +2 or +3 legendary potential unique. You have this amazing exalted and you're afraid you're not going to get the most important affix or affixes off of it. You can use this this Rune of Creation to create a second one, to create a copy of it, and have 2 shots, at least on the exalted end, of getting the exalted affix you're looking for. Okay, Rune of Cleansing, which is pretty much useless, and even more useless in the new system, was replaced with Rune of Discovery, which is also a really cool rune, where you can add 1 random tier affix to all empty affix slots on an item. It has an increased chance of rolling rare affixes, and does not cost forging potential, so it's definitely a risk reward there, as you don't have control directly over which affixes you're going to put on, but you also don't pay anything to do it. So that will be especially useful for exalteds when you don't have enough affixes and you don't want to waste your crafting. Your crafting potential, your forging potential. I swear I'll get these eventually. Your forging potential. You don't want to waste that. You might try this to see if you can get lucky. Rune of Removal is really, really cool now. It now returns shards that are removed to your forge. So the rune of the Shattering Rune is still there, and it still gives you a random number. Now the removal chooses randomly what it will remove, but it will give you all of that. So if you had a tier 5 class specific fix you wanted, use this. You might have to use multiple, but you can use multiple. So just keep Rune of Removal on that item until you remove the one you cared the most about. And you are now guaranteed to get all of the affixes off that. This is super, super valuable for targeting particular fix crafting material. Rune of Shaping is the same, except it no longer rolls to moderate rolls. This is great for high-end crafting. A much welcomed change for sure. I think that's most of that's most of the stuff that mattered there. All right, Druid, Rework, and Swarmblade. Most people probably know about this already. Swarmblade is a new skill, technically a new transformation skill that has its own sub-skills. It's a combination between summoning, a minion type build, and also a fast melee build. Think like Rogue and Necro, or Rogue and Beastmaster combination. That's pretty much what it seems to be. We'll see how that goes. Werebear also got a big transformation too. It looks way cooler. It picked up Rampage and Maul. Rampage is new movement ability. Maul is its new melee damage ability. It's basically a slam attack. Very cool. I'll be actually playing this for patch, the start of patch. So if you want to check out what it looks like, you can come hang out with me and I will show you. Spriggan also got, of course, a big rework. Spirit Thorn sounds really cool. It's kind of like Ice Thorns was, but hopefully better. Thorn Shields, a very interesting defensive/offensive option with Reflect ability on it. Healing Totem and Vines are pretty similar. Of course, the trees for these are all going to change as well. We can't see them now, but hopefully they'll be better than they were. There's also a new resource that you use instead of mana. With Druid, you use Rage. Rage decays over time, unlike mana. And there's going to be different ways to regenerate it, but it should be an interesting way of managing a resource that doesn't currently exist in the game. Entangling Roots also got overhauled. Summon Spring got overhauled as well. The passive tree is completely changed. We don't know what that looks like though, because they didn't show us, so we'll have to find out by actually looking at it in the game. Okay, new skills. Upheaval and Umbral Blades have been added. Upheaval is for Primalist. Umbral Blades is for Rogue. Both look pretty cool. All right, major skill changes. There's not like a whole lot in here. I'm gonna skip all the stuff that's not super important. Less chance to apply amulets on hit was not functioning on Warpath and Flurry before, so they were doing more dots than they were supposed to. So that will be a nerf if you play those. Devouring Orb changed significantly. I don't know what this is all going to mean for Devouring Orb and for builds that have been using it. Some stuff looks way better, some stuff maybe not so much. A lot of testing will probably be happening on that in the first few days before we really know how good it is, but it's definitely significantly changed. Ice Thorns is supposed to be removed from the game. They decided not to, so that's sticking around. Maelstrom was also changed significantly. There was a instant cast option that's gone, but now there's an option called Lagon's Slumber, where you build up stacks, so to speak, that aren't added to your buffs, so like they aren't actually activated until you use this skill. But so for the longer you don't use the skill, the more of these stacks add up, and then when you use the skill, you get a bunch of stacks all at once. So that might make it easier to use when you're having to do it directly than it was before. We'll have to find out. It's another area where we just don't know without actually experiencing it. But hopefully it's better. Static Orb got nerfed to all get out. I do think my version completely survived with no issues. But if you were a big fan of the one where it orbited, that got nerfed hard, like really, really hard. I don't know if it's going to survive it or what, but there's a bunch of changes here that are directly targeting that. So if that was a build you used, you might want to check it out. Totem's got some buffs, nothing crazy, but maybe a little bit better. Primalist unlock order for skills changed a good bit, but nothing too crazy. Nothing's going to be like completely game changing. Maybe the biggest one is Entangling Roots is no longer accessible by anything that's not a druid. It is a 35-point in druid skill, so you can't use that anymore. Oh, Scorpion is now accessible by non-beast masters and Sabretooth is not. That seems like that's great for everyone because nobody really used Sabretooth because it's not very good and it's super old and needs a rework, so seems great. That's the majority of what happened there. Passives, it's not a whole lot to report on here. Blade Dancer got a bunch of throwing attack, well, not a bunch, a couple of throwing attack support things, which should go well with Umbral Blades. Of course, the Druid passive tree got overhauled, but we just don't know much about it right now. There's not much to talk about there. Another thing to note is there's a number of these that are talking about having like bonus, like if you get a certain number of points in a node, you get this bonus. So that's a new effect that didn't exist before. Like right here, Glacial Strike now grants 40 melee cold every 3 seconds as a non-scaling 5-point bonus. So when you get the 5 points, you get that extra buff. So that's worth noting. Monolith of Fate has a couple of cool things. Spires now only attack the player while they're in combat, meaning that you can take your time to pick up your loot after you've killed the things around you. And there are 10 new random echo layouts, so lots of new maps to explore. Campaign has a bunch of visual updates too. This looks just absolutely sick, so cool. Hopefully the rest of them can live up to this because it's gonna be hard, but very, very cool. There's some visual upgrades, nothing too crazy though. Except for this, character select screen has been completely changed and it looks sick. So the first time you log in, you're going to see something completely different right from the get-go. Very, very cool. Let's see. I think that covers most of the big stuff. If you were a fan of controllers, you got a lot more stuff with that. Controllers got a lot of upgrades. Oh yeah, there's a couple things in here. New spear base types, including visuals and stats. Same with staves, new staff base types, new body armor for Sentinel, new body armor for Acolyte, Mage Acolyte Primalist, higher tier stuff tends to look more higher tier. New models for Acolyte, Mage, and Sentinel. Yeah. New uniques, 16 new uniques. Let's see. Boulder's Wrath got a 5-second internal cooldown. That's going to be big, especially with the new transformations. Let's see what other big stuff happened. Set items got buffed generally across the board, but nothing to make up for the fact they can't be legendaries. Note that they cannot become legendaries. That's going to be huge this patch, so we're going to talk about that probably all patch. Also the lightning meteor one didn't get a buff for some reason. Everything else did, but the one that's actually good didn't. So bear that in mind if you were using any of these sets for any reason, they are better, but they're not going to keep up with legendaries, so your build might suffer over time. Enemies got a little bit tougher globally, but Chapter 9 enemies got a lot weaker globally. There was a lot of issues with Chapter 9 enemies. They were really struggling. People were really struggling on them, especially in the arena. The scaling issue with those, and also just some of the attacks mechanically were extremely difficult to deal with when they were doing very, very high damage. So those overall look like they're pretty much nailing all the things that need to be done with that. So that will be good. Some of the other enemies got buffed. A few of these got nerfed, but most of them got buffed. Let's see, block got changed a bit, but honestly, most players aren't going to notice this. It's not a big deal. Damage taken from critical strikes turned into bonus damage. This has no mechanical change for most players. It just makes sure that you can't get over 50% less damage taken from critical strikes, which would have allowed you to take less damage than the bonus damage was doing. So like actually reduce the damage you're taking beyond a normal hit if they would have kept it that way. So again, most players, this isn't going to make any difference. It does the same thing mechanically. They're just making sure that legendaries aren't causing a problem with this. I think that just about covers it. Stun chance had a change. Most players aren't going to notice this. It's easier to stun, but you can't stun lock an enemy the same way, but you probably still can stun lock unless you're a fan of stun or really worried about it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's not a huge deal. It's stun's still gonna be strong. That's really what it is. Stun's still gonna be strong. There's a controller support, some optimization stuff, and then you just have some bug fixes. The biggest bug fix I think to note is Sacrifice's Catalyst of Horror node was not causing Sacrifice to chain to other minions unless the player was close to the minions. This was a massive nerf to the skill. It made it pretty much useless. It's finally been fixed, so that works now. Sacrifice fans rejoice. You definitely have something to do now with that. Okay, I think that covers everything. Not the 10 minutes I was hoping for, but that was probably ambitious. 17 minutes is not too bad. Given how big these were, it took me 2 hours to go through this with chat. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope this informs you all the things you need to know. If not, again, I've got the 2-hour version, and I'm on. I'm almost certainly streaming if you're watching this soon after I released it, so feel free to come in and ask questions about that, or hop into the Discord and ask questions there. Either way, thanks again for watching. Enjoy your time in 0.8.4. This is a super exciting patch, and I really hope you guys love it as much as I'm sure I'm going to. All right, thanks again. Enjoy your time in Last Epoch, and I'll see you all again real soon.